I have long wanted to make a 1930s ski suit. The 1930s were a very fashionable decade, and that fashion sense extended not only to streetwear and designer wear, but also to all sorts of sportswear. That included summer sports like tennis and swimming, but it also included winter sports like snowshoeing and skiing. I've been pinning stylish ski suits on Pinterest for quite a while, and I've been eyeing this pattern on Etsy by Eva Dress as a means to make my dreams come true. So here is the mostly completed mock-up. I say mostly because I figured it wasn't necessary to do the second sleeve for the jacket, since the thing I mostly wanted to check was just fit and also the insertion of these really weird, very shallow pockets in the jacket. The pattern seller suggests omitting them altogether since they are somewhat complicated to do, but I like having places to put my hands when I'm standing around, so I figured I'll keep them in, and I figured out an easier way to do them, which I will detail soon. But overall, I'm very happy with the fit of the jacket, and I think I understand its construction quite well now as I move into making my final version. Aside from the very small change to the insertion of the pockets, there isn't really much that I want to change. I'm thinking I might add a phone-sized pocket to the lining that will go between the lining and the fashion fabric. That will maybe go like right here and have space for a phone, which I like to keep close to my body if I'm going outside in the cold. Obviously, this wouldn't have been a consideration in the 1930s, but extra pockets obviously can't hurt. Onto the pants, and you can't see me right now because I want to show how their top works. Otherwise, they work pretty normally. They just function like regular pants at the bottom, and they'll be gathered into a cuff or a elastic webbing, which is what the pattern suggests, if I could find something like that, to make them a little bit more voluminous and puffy. But here's how they work. These two are tabs that will go like this and sort of can tighten and loosen as one sees fit for a little bit of change in size. It has a side placket on the left side and two pockets. These ones are a little deeper. They go about here. Don't look at that one. I don't want to talk about it. And it has a very high waistband. The seam is all the way right here, so I definitely did have to make some adjustments to the rise of this pattern, which was suggested to me anyway by the pattern seller, which is why I have this weird line going across the pockets right now. As I'm showing you this is why I'm wondering how much I should hem the jacket. The photo set shows the pockets being visible, so I might make the jacket relatively short and maybe just below waist level, but we'll see once I make the final product. As it stands right now, it's a little hard to envision it as a warm, cozy, stylish ski suit, but I see the vision, I see the bones, and I'm quite happy that I took the time to do a pretty detailed mock-up so that I could figure out all of the sort of fiddly bits, especially the pockets. I'm very excited to get started, so I will send you back to Past Sophie, and we will get started on the rest of the ski suit. With the mock-up completed, I went ahead and purchased my final fashion fabric. I went with a bright fuchsia flannel for the lining and a nice navy blue wool for the outside. I thought that the two colors would complement each other in quite a 1930s Art Deco way. I started with the lining. Like I said earlier, I used this lovely hot pink flannel as a contrast to the navy blue fashion fabric. Although the pattern only mentioned the jacket being lined, I wanted to line both garments because I wanted them to be as warm as possible. Once I completed the basic construction, darts, side seams, the phone pocket, and the like, I set the linings aside to work on the jacket. To add some color to the dark jacket, I used the lining fabric for the pockets as well. The pockets are inserted into a slash cut following the point of the dart in the jacket front. The pattern has two pocket pieces, an upper and a lower pocket, but I found it much easier and neater to use one piece for both sides, since the edges of the pocket lined up more when they were supposed to be sewn together. One pocket piece is placed right sides together along the slash, stitched and turned. The seam allowance of the other slash is then turned down, tapering to almost nothing at the point at the end of the slash. The second pocket piece is then joined to that in a lapped seam. The dart is sewn as well, as the lapped seam continues down the entire jacket front. Then the pocket pieces are finally joined together. After the pockets were inserted and the back darts sewn as normal, the shoulder and side seams could be sewn. The completed lining was then put into the jacket, or vest I suppose at that point, and I basted a strip of interfacing that I had cut using the facing pattern along both front edges. This gave the lapels some extra stiffness and shape. I made up the collar with a layer of interfacing as well and attached it to the jacket body. Then the front facing was sewn on, folded over and ironed. The facing finished some of the collar's raw edges, and the other raw edges of both the collar and facing were folded over and tacked to the lining. I love lining garments because it allows for such neat finishing. Following the pattern's instructions, I top-stitched the jacket's collar, lapel, and front edge. I used a contrasting thread to continue the pink and blue theme, although my thread was a little bit lighter than the hot pink flannel. Next, I sewed the sleeves. I attached the fashion fabric sleeves by machine as normal, and then folded the seam allowance of the sleeve lining to cover the armhole seam, and sewed it by hand. It may seem like a lot of work, but I think this has to be my new favorite way of finishing an armhole seam. I felt much more in control than I do when I use bias binding or a zigzag stitch, and I think the overall result was much neater. I folded the sleeve ends up against each other and filled them. Using the markings, I essentially created an inverted pleat and sewed a zipper between the two edges. This allows the sleeve to fit much more tightly around the wrist than if it didn't have a zipper, and protects the arm from any sort of air that might slip through if the zipper did not have any fabric backing. I prepped the front tab with bias binding around the raw edge as the pattern suggests. Unfortunately, I ran out of bias binding before I could get to the back tabs, but I was able to simply fold and top stitch the edges. I don't have it on video because I realized my mistake and scrambled to fix it off camera, but the tabs are inserted into the darts at the front and back of the pants and sewn as the darts are sewn, seamlessly attaching them to the pants. Pants pocket is simpler to insert as it is a much more traditional welt pocket. The welt is placed on the marker for the pocket, and the two pocket pieces are placed one on top of the welt and one touching the edge from the opposite direction. All of the edges of these pieces sit against the line that is going to become the pocket entrance later. Here I used the upper and lower pocket pieces in the pattern since it lined up much better. I then stitched all the way around the entrance of the pocket with an allowance of about 1/4 of an inch, slashed between the two pieces, and flipped the whole pocket to the wrong side. The welt was top stitched to stay in place, and the pocket bag was sewn. Just as with the jacket, the pants were then seamed together and the lining placed inside. I basted them together at the waist by machine to make sure nothing moved around while I attached the waistband and made up the side opening. I reinforced the waistband with interfacing as I had done with the collar and front. The waistband lining was then basted to the outside waistband, right sides together, and the front overlap was placed on top.
Go crazy over people like you. Daffy people.
Once the outside part of the waistband was attached, I sewed the back overlap to the pants, ironed it, folded it down, and stitched it to the lining. Although the pattern sent a top stitch here, I decided against it since it was likely going to be covered by the jacket anyway.
Acting like a loon, it must be love, sweet love, crazy people like me go crazy over people like you.
The waistband lining and front overlap were then sewn to the outside waistband together so that when the seams were clipped, everything could be turned down and ironed neatly. Any raw edges were then felled to the lining. Once the pants were mostly complete, I had to determine the button placement and hem for the jacket. Although a lot of 1930s ski suits seemed to have longer jackets that reached the hips, the pattern art showed the pants pockets as visible, so I hemmed the jacket to reach a few inches below my waist so that it looked like the pattern picture.
Laugh and say it's great to be alive, and keep your sunny side up, up, hide the side that gets blue. If you have 9 suns in a row, baseball teams make money, you know. Keep your funny side up, up, let your laughter come through. Do stand up on your legs, be like 2 fried eggs, keep your sunny side up. I attached all the closures, buttons on the jacket, and a coat hook and bar to close the jacket if I wanted to fold up the lapels, and everything was done except for one thing, and that being the elastic webbing at the bottom of the pants. The pattern instructions call this webbing and show a picture like this, which makes me think of a sort of woven stretchy material that's not fully elastic. However, it is not 1935 anymore, and this material is not easily found anywhere, and webbing is used to describe another material now, so I don't really know what to do. My first thought was to use some very wide elastic, but that was kind of hard to come by, and I figured it would kind of look a little ugly. So I've thought of another solution. And so I set to work making 2 pant cuffs constructed in the same way as a tiered waistband. I cut 2 rectangles as long as the pant leg circumference and twice as wide as I wanted the finished cuff to be. For each cuff, I cut 4 strips of narrow elastic slightly larger than the circumference of my ankle. I then folded the rectangle in half and sewed 4 channels, each with an opening. Because my elastic was slightly less than ½ of an inch wide, each channel was ½ an inch.
I inserted the elastic in the channels and sewed the elastic ends together, securing them. I then finished and closed each channel. This gathered the cuff into neat little lines that look a little like ruching and allowed it to fit my ankle. I attached the raw edge of the cuff to the pant bottoms and felled the lining to it to finish the hems. Then the entire ensemble was finally done. Also, I switched the buttons and made the jacket properly double-breasted. It's done. I am so extremely pleased with it. It gives me so much joy to be walking around in this and to look at myself in the mirror and to see a stylish 1930s skier, just as I have seen in so many photos and fashion plates. Overall, I'm very pleased with the fit and the look of everything. I'm very happy that I replaced the buttons. These ones are a little shinier and they have a little bit more detail. And now that the jacket is double-breasted, I like it a whole lot more. I think the collar looks really fashionable and sharp. I would definitely wear this jacket alone without the pants. The only thing I'm a little bit unhappy with is the length of the sleeves. I think they're a little too long, and because the zipper holds it quite snugly to the wrist, you can see the extra fabric along the upper arms. But that's something I could fix if I really wanted to, and I don't really feel like it right now, so it's not something that really bothers me. For a while, I thought the pants were a little bit too long, but the more that I've worn them, the more I'm glad that I gave them some good amount of volume at the bottom. One of the things I like best about 1930s ski pants is that they have such, I don't know what to call it, like bell bottom, but tight at the ankle shape. I think it's really fun, and I look very round in these legs, and they're quite comfortable. And I think that's the ultimate goal for any sort of sportswear. Standing here in my living room in August, it feels quite warm and cozy, but I haven't really given it much of a chance to prove itself in any sort of New England winter, so we'll see about that once we get to the colder months. I do plan on wearing long underwear under this, so hopefully those will be an extra layer against the cold, and I can always close the collar and make it a little bit warmer and wear a scarf and additional accessories like that to improve my warmth. I do cross-country and downhill ski, although I don't plan on wearing this much for downhill skiing, so I think if I was cross-country skiing in it, which is what I primarily plan to use it for, I would be exerting myself a little bit more than if I were sitting on a lift, so I think this should be warm enough for most of my purposes. Thank you all for coming on this journey of wish fulfillment with me. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again very soon.